students, I'm back with your next class. In today's class, we are going to discuss another important population interaction, and that is mutualism. Now, you have learned about mutualism or many relation about mutualism between two different species or two different organisms in various kind of examples in class 11 or also in recently in the previous chapter of sexual reproduction in flowering plants, isn't it? Now, you know very well that mutualism is a plus kind of interaction where both the species would get benefited by each other. Okay. Also, there is an important mention regarding mutualism that in mutualism, the two species not only they will benefit by each other, they would often remain together. They would mostly remain together, and if separated, they won't be able to survive. So they are inseparable units, and if separated, none of the organism or none of the species will be able to survive. Means they are completely dependent on each other. Okay, so because they are very much dependent on each other, that's why they would usually show co-evolution and co-extinction. That means if one of the species changes over time or evolves, likewise the other one will also have to evolve accordingly. Otherwise the association cannot be set up, or the association cannot be maintained. Likewise, if one of the organism or one of the species becomes extinct, even the other one becomes extinct. That's because they are so much interdependent on each other for completion of their life cycle. Understood that? So that's why do remember these important points related to mutualism. First, it's a plus type of interaction. Next, here both the species would benefit by each other. Next, they are going to remain together and they are going to be inseparable. If separated, they won't be able to survive. And fourth, they would show co-evolution and co-extinction. Is that clear? So now let's see what it is actually about, or let us explain this phenomena with the help of some important examples. Okay. So here, see, it's a beneficial association to both the interacting species, and here two species often live together and cannot live separately. Alright. Next, important examples. First, we will be discussing two important examples from plant and fungal mutualism. Plant and fungi. Okay. So the first one is very common, and that is lichen. You have learned about it in details in biological classification already, isn't it? So as you already know, lichen is mainly an association between a fungi and a green algae, or sometimes a cyanobacteria. Okay, so in this association, the green algae being autotrophic will be providing food to the fungi, and the fungi would be providing or absorbing important nutrients from the soil and would be supplying it to the algae. Okay, and in case instead of green algae, if there is a cyanobacteria present, the cyanobacteria would also be mostly fixing atmospheric nitrogen. It was fixed nitrogen, and that will also be very much beneficial to the plant, because after all, nitrogen is a critical element, isn't it? It is very much deficient in the soil where the plants would grow, and that's why additional nitrogenous compounds present in the soil due to nitrogen fixation can be very much essential or beneficial to the plants. Alright, so do remember this. So see here, it's a mutual association between a fungi and algae or cyanobacteria, that is blue-green algae. Now do remember, the fungi here would be known as mycobuoyant, and the algae or cyanobacterial component will be known as phycobuoyant. Okay, if you remember. Next, the algae produces food through photosynthesis for the fungi, whereas the fungi would absorb nutrients from the soil for the algae. So this is how they are going to benefit each other. And if you suppose separate the algae and the fungi and try to culture them somewhere else separately, they won't be able to survive likewise. Fine. That's what is the main characteristics of mutualism. Fine. Next, another important example that has also been discussed with you is about mycorrhiza. Mycorrhiza, as you know, is a mutual association between a fungi and the roots of higher plants, isn't it? So see, it is a mutual association between a fungi and the roots of higher plants, And here also the fungi would absorb essential nutrients from the soil, while the plant would provide food, ready-made food or organic salute to the fungi. Okay, it's kind of the same type of association, but then here fungi and roots of higher plants. Like in case of Pinus, which is a gymnosperm, the prevalence of mycorrhizal root is maximum. Okay, likewise in certain orchids as well, in their roots are found the fungal association. If separated, the orchid or those plants won't be able to survive. So do remember this, fine. And also I think you remember that mycorrhiza again can be of two types, that is ectomycorrhiza, where the fungal component remains outside the roots of the plant, and endomycorrhiza, where the fungal component will remain inside the roots of the plant, which we also refer as VAM, vesicular arbuscular mycorrhiza. Right? So all of that information in details won't be required here in ecology, but then the basic things should be clear to you. Okay? Next, plant-animal mutualism. After the plant and fungi association, let's see a few important facts regarding plant-animal mutualism. So now, first thing, plants, what kind of help they can extract from the animals? The first thing that comes in your mind from this would be pollination and of course seed dispersal, isn't it? So pollination, the plants being helped by the animals in pollination would be known as zoophily, whereas in case they help in the seed dispersal, that would be again referred as zoochory. Do remember these important terminologies. Okay, so right, first of all, so plant-animal interaction or mutualism would allow these two association, or these two subjects mostly, that the plants would be benefited by the animals during pollination or during seed dispersal. Fine. So see this. Plants require animals for pollinating their flowers, that is zoophily, and dispersal of seeds, that is zoochory. Plants also provide rewards to the animals in the form of pollen and nectar for pollination. While pollinating, the insects would be mainly receiving edible pollens or nectar from the plant in the form of a reward, or else juicy and nutritious fruits for seed dispersal. So for seed dispersal again, the plant or the animals would be getting something else as reward, and that is the fruit. Okay. Plant-animal interactions often involve co-evolution of the mutualist. Now this I have already told you, as because plants and animals, they have to interact among each other, they have to keep up a very strong link between them. Even minute amount of change in one of the partner won't allow the mutual association to be associated or to be maintained. That's why co-evolution is a must during or in plant-animal associations. Understood this? Now, important examples from this category would be fig and fig wasp. That means the fig inflorescence, it gets pollinated mainly due to the wasp species. Okay, so see, each for each fig species there is a partner species of wasp without which pollination cannot occur. So for every species of fig, there is a partner species of wasp by the help of which pollination would occur. So mainly here what would happen, you see, the female wasp would use the fruit of the fig as a ovipositor. That means a site or a safe site for laying its eggs. So while it searches for the suitable site for laying its eggs, it will be eventually causing pollination to occur. Okay, so as it goes through the inflorescence and searches for the most suitable site where it should lay its eggs, the wasp will end up pollinating the fig inflorescence. And also once the eggs are laid, as the eggs will hatch, or even the offsprings will arise out, for those offsprings as well, the food that they will have to consume for those offsprings, the food is usually the developing seed of the fig. Okay, so not only the fig is allowing or providing the wasp with a safe place for laying its eggs, rather it is also providing the fig fruit, which is going to provide nourishment in the initial days to the newly born progeny or the newly formed progeny as well. Fine. So that's how fig and fig wasp will remain associated. The next one is again something that we have mentioned under sexual reproduction in flowering plant chapter, that is the sexual deceit between Ophrys speculum and Colpa aureus, if you remember, right? So see, orchid and bees, Ophrys speculum uses sexual deceit to get pollinated by the species of bee, that is Colpa aureus. So if you remember, the Ophrys speculum's flower, the petals of the flower would resemble exactly the female wasp, okay, or the bee. Fine. So while the male bee would be, in search of female bees for mating, it sometimes would mistaken the flower of the Ophrys speculum to be the female, and then pseudocopulates with it to take some pollen grains. Okay, while pseudocopulation, it will take some pollen grains. Again, when it goes to another flower and pseudocopulates, those pollen will be transferred to the other flower. That's how pollination would occur. So that's why Ophrys speculum and Colpa aureus, this association is very, very, very important, and it's an ideal example for co-evolution as well. Because if slightly the color of the petals of the flower of Ophrys speculum changes a little bit, in that case the chances of pollination would be missed. Okay, so they will always have to maintain that the flower petals would exactly look like the female wasp or the female bee. Otherwise, it won't be having the mutual association, won't be maintained anymore. Understood this? Fine. So this is all about mutualism. I hope all of you are clear about it. The important examples that we have discussed, they are very, very important for you to remember for your exam. Next, let us discuss proto-cooperation. Now let's discuss another plus-plus interaction, that is proto-cooperation. Of course, this association is not given in your NCERT book, but it is important because you need to remember the difference between mutualism and proto-cooperation. Okay. So that means in nature, not all beneficial associations where both the species are getting benefited by each other can be regarded as mutualism. That is very essential for you to understand, and that differentiation you will be able to do when you know about proto-cooperation. Okay, so let's see what is proto-cooperation all about. See, proto-cooperation is also a plus-plus association. That means here both the species that are interacting would be benefited by each other, just like mutualism. But the difference is that, like in mutualism, when both the partners would be separated, none of them will be able to complete their life cycle and none of them will be able to survive, isn't it? But in proto-cooperation, the two species until together would be benefited by each other, but they can also live without each other. If separated, they also would be able to complete their life cycle without each other. So that's why it's a temporary association. Understood that? So that's the main difference. Both are plus-plus type of interaction, but in mutualism, the species that are interacting, they cannot live without each other, but in proto-cooperation, the species that are interacting will be very well able to manage without each other. They can live without each other. Understood? Okay, I think all of you are clear about it. Fine. So let's see a few important examples about it. So let's first see what's the definition. See, it is an association between individuals of two species, each of which is benefited by the presence of the other, but can live equally well without the association. Okay. Now, important examples are red-billed oxpecker and yellow-billed oxpecker. Okay. They sit on the back of black rhinoceros and feed on the ticks. That means they are benefiting, or they are getting food from the rhinoceros, and in return the rhinoceros is getting rid of the endoparasite, that is ticks, from its body. Fine. Also, the birds would warn the rhinoceros of approaching danger. So because while there would be any danger approaching the rhinoceros, the birds would either make some kind of noise, or they would rather fly off or do something due to which the rhinoceros would be warned that there may be something threatening in its surroundings. Okay, so here the rhinoceros and the woodpecker, they are getting benefited by each other, right? But then even if they get separated, then there would be no problem for any one of them to complete their life cycle. Understood? So until they are together, they would be benefited by each other. But also when separated, it would not make any difference. Fine? Next. The crocodile bird, a plover, enters the mouth of a crocodile to feed on the parasitic leeches. A similar kind of association where the bird, okay, the crocodile bird is getting food, whereas the crocodile is getting rid of the blood-sucking parasites. So it's a kind of a plus-plus association. But if you separate the crocodile bird from the crocodile, it would not make any difference. Fine? Next. Sea anemone attached to the body of hermit crab protects it from the enemies with its nematocyst. Sea anemones, they have nematocyst, by the help of which they will be able to protect the hermit crab, on top of which or on the back of which the sea anemone would be associated. Fine. So in return, the anemone also would receive pieces of food dropped by the crab and is carried to new places by it. So what is the kind of benefit both are extracting? The sea anemone is providing protection to the crab, hermit crab, by the help of its nematocyst, whereas the sea anemone in return is getting food from the crab and also is getting to ride it or is getting to move to new places by the help of the crab. So even if you separate them, it would not make much of a difference, but when they are together, they are helping each other. Fine. So this is all about proto-cooperation. I hope you are able to differentiate between proto-cooperation and mutualism both. Now it's clear to you that in nature, not all beneficial associations can be termed as mutualism. Okay. So the last topic that we'll be discussing in this chapter today would be commensalism. So with commensalism, we'll complete this chapter and we'll start the new chapter, that is ecosystem, in the next class. Okay. So let's see what is commensalism. So finally, this is the last population interaction, that is commensalism. So commensalism is a +0 type of interaction where one species would be benefited and the other one would remain neutral. That means it will neither be benefited nor be harmed. Okay. So commensalism is a kind of association where the one which is benefited is called commensal, whereas the other one which is neither getting benefited or harmed is called the host. Okay. So let's see the definition. So here one species is benefited and the other neither harmed or benefited. That's what I have told you already. And as I have again told you that here the one that is getting benefited is the commensal, whereas the other one is the host. That's it. There is nothing more to it. Now important examples you need to remember. Like the first one, epiphytes. Epiphytes, all of you know, the space parasite, the plants which grows on top of the other plants, right? So epiphytes, usually the orchids, growing on other plants like mango, which is the host here, gets benefited in the form of shelter, but the host neither gets benefited nor harmed. Okay, so for all the epiphytes, they will act as commensals. They are getting benefited as they're receiving some or using some space in the body of the host. But the host, while it is giving up the space of its body to the commensal or to the epiphyte, it will not be getting either harmed or benefited. Fine. So for all epiphytes, they are commensals. Do remember. Next, barnacles growing on the back of whale benefits in the form of shelter. Whale remains unaffected. So these barnacles, they would be anyways getting the shelter from the whale, right? But then in return, the whale would have nothing much to be losing or gaining. So it would remain neutral. Next, clownfish that lives among sea anemone gets protection from the predators which stay away from the stinging tentacles of sea anemone. So sea anemone, as you know, they have nematocysts, and that's why they are highly toxic or are usually avoided by the predators. Now, taking the advantage of this fact, the clownfish, which are otherwise harmless, it would obviously be vulnerable to predation, right? So that's why, to protect itself, it would remain with the sea anemone. So when it remains with the sea anemone, as the predators would be avoiding the sea anemone, even they would be getting protection. But in doing so, the sea anemone is neither getting benefit nor is it is getting any harm. Okay. So that's why it's a commensalism association. Next, cattle egrets forage close to where cattle are grazing, because as the cattle move, they stir up and flush out from the vegetation insects that otherwise might be difficult for the egrets to find or catch. So that means what is happening here is that cattle egrets, these are some birds. They usually would search in the grass some insects to feed upon. Now what they do is, see, finding out a tiny insect from out of this so much of bunch of grass would be of course a difficult or tedious job, isn't it? That's why, to make the job easier, they would remain nearby to where cattle are grazing. Because as the cattle would be grazing, they would be anyway stirring up or flushing out the vegetation or the grass. And that's how to identify or to locate the insects would become much easier for the cattle egrets. Understood? That's how the cattle egrets are getting benefited by the cattle, but the cattle are neither getting benefited or harmed. So these being important examples of commensalism, with this we end the chapter Organism and Population. Here itself, this was the largest chapter in ecology. After that, the rest of the chapters won't be having much of difficulty or won't be that long. So in that case, this first chapter of ecology being completed, the next chapter will start ecosystem, and that will start in the next class.